you amigos? Welcome to the ATE channel. Y'all can call me Ace, and today we're going to be talking about the American Tactical Omni Hybrid Maxx, as well as the Alpha Maxx, going over the entire family tree. Where does it come from? How does it shoot? How do you maintain it? And would I buy it again? There's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. So let's start off with the origins. The American Tactical Omni Hybrid actually began as only a lower receiver. The engineers over at American Tactical set out to produce a 100% polymer lower receiver, thus giving birth to the Gen 1 Omni lower. These parts hit the market at the low price of $50, stripped of course, not including any other trigger components. However, customer reviews quickly exposed a fatal flaw of the new parts. They were cracking under extended use, sending the engineers over at American Tactical back to the drawing board to whip up the Omni Hybrid, aka the Gen 2. They updated their design by adding metal inserts in high stress areas, specifically around the rear takedown pin and the threads of the buffer tube. The Gen 2 was met with some better reviews, but many still remain skeptical on whether the polymer is as durable as the aluminum, and if we're being real, it's not. But we'll get into that later. Regardless of people's concerns, ATI would release the polymer upper a year later, following the same reinforced polymer principles. This directly led to the mass production of the Omni Hybrid Maxx. This platform combines a polymer upper and polymer lowers, effectively being the first rifle in this series. The Hybrid Maxx would remain the same gun up until 2022, when ATI updated their design with the Alpha 15. This variant would only release with a 16-inch barrel, but it featured the same polymer upper and lower with a few minor tweaks, and also what feels to be a different trigger group, but we'll get into that later in the maintenance section of this video. The ARP variant you see in front of you here wouldn't release until a year later in 2023, effectively changing the name of the Alpha 15 to the Alpha Maxx in order to include its now new little brother. The only specific differences between an Omni Hybrid ARP and an Alpha Maxx ARP is just the pistol brace. For the most part, they are still just the same rifle. Today in 2026, people either love or they hate this rifle. There's a lot of mixed reviews, but the general consensus is these plastic rifles were never meant to take over the market. They are catered towards civilians who only shoot a couple hundred rounds every single year. And if that's what you're looking for, this just might be the rifle for you. But that's enough history. How does this thing shoot?
Two more.
Failure to eject. Puta madre, está caliente de a madres, güey.
To cut a long story short, these rifles definitely have a break-in period. When I purchased mine, I had about 500 rounds already through it, and it was honestly buttery smooth. However, I will mention that I did have the chance to shoot this rifle fresh out the box with the previous owner, when jams were more frequent. Also, when I purchased it, I received it with an old optic holding the handguard to the upper receiver. Reason being, it shipped out the factory with the loose barrel nut. It was easily fixable, but honestly the fact I had to do that and it wasn't done out the factory is a little ridiculous. Regardless, since then it has treated me very well. It feeds anything I feed through it, especially cheap ammo. What more could you ask from a $300 rifle? Which brings me to the Alpha Maxx. I gotta say, I was optimistic going into our range day, but after shooting 60 rounds, I did not want to shoot anymore. I will also say I do not personally own this rifle. This was lent to me to feature on the channel by a friend of mine, so shout out to my boy Christian. Don't be offended by me shitting on your rifle. All of that being said, our range day started off pretty smooth. We were using the 60 round casket magazine and everything was swell up until the last 20 rounds. When we began to have failure to extract,
caliente de a madres, güey.
And the bolt was just not catching the rounds in the magazine.
It didn't.
Uh-oh. Or maybe it's the bullets?
Probably the magazine.
Okay.
Okay.
I can't blame the rifle too much because after I inserted a 30 round P-mag into it, it continued to run just fine. However, considering that the 60 round magazine comes in the box with this rifle and it doesn't work well with the rifle, what the fuck is the point? Secondly, my biggest pet peeve about this rifle easily has the toughest safety selector I have felt on any AR in my short 24 years of life. You should be able to just flick this thing off. I mean, you can hear how much force I'm putting behind that and it just does not want to go. And it's extremely frustrating when we look at my Omni Hybrid, which is an older version of this rifle. I can flick this thing, no problem. And putting it on during training is very easy. I was trying to teach my friend good safety habits at the range with the rifle, but honestly, I gave up on having him torture himself by actuating the safety and just had him eject the rounds before handing over the rifle. Third, a thing I like about this rifle is the fact that it ships out the box with some iron sights. The vast majority of rifles, especially budget rifles, don't ship with any optics. If you have an Alpha Maxx, you have no excuse other than the fact you don't plan on hitting anything anyway. Fourth and lastly, my biggest criticism is the fact that this is a non-NFA item, meaning I cannot put a buttstock on this. Meaning I'm forced to awkwardly hold this thing like a pistol, rendering my iron sights useless, or push the brace into my shoulder while the ATF comes to my house and shoots both of my dogs for using the rifle the way it was designed. That's more of a criticism on our federal regulation than the actual rifle, but I do think it's important to point out that unless you get a tax stamp on this thing, it's not that pleasant to shoot.
Yo, let me see that shit. What is wrong with this thing, dude?
Yo.
Oh, damn. It's actually stuck. It won't. Dude, this thing is stuck. The charging handle blows.
Now we're clear.
Man, that thing struggles, bro.
Overall, both of these rifles do just about what you expect them to at the $300 price point. Nothing more and probably less. They shoot just fine, assuming you're patient enough to shoot past the break-in period.
So I think it's about time that we get all up in them guts. We're going to start off by talking about the Omni Hybrid and then move over to that Alpha Maxx. We're going to start off by talking about the tip and ending off on the butt. This rifle has a 16-inch barrel. It has the stock foregrip and muzzle device. I did take the time to add this Magpul foregrip, a Magpul sling, and this Burris RT3 prism sight. Now before I start the disassembly, the internals of this rifle are pretty much what you'd expect them to be if you've ever taken apart an AR-15. However, for the sake of education, I'm going to show you how to take apart an AR-15. YouTube may not like that, but they can lick my balls. First, I'm going to push out the pin that holds the trigger group. You can see this, they hold themselves in place. You do not have to push them out till they fall out. You will break it if you do so. Then I'm going to push out this second pin and slip it right off. Next, I'm going to take the charging handle and pull the whole bolt assembly out of the upper. Now for regular maintenance, you don't really need to go much deeper than this. Just wipe everything down. Make sure anything that slides or gets banged together, get some oil on it. Giggity. For the sake of education, I'm gonna tell you how to take apart your bolt assembly. So you're gonna take this pin and pry it out with the fine screwdriver or whatever you may have. Can be a little tricky, especially if it's full of carbon. There we go, I've got just the head out. Then you should pull right out. Be very careful with this piece. If you lose it, you're fucked. Here you have your firing pin. Next, we're gonna take our bolt, push it back. Then this little thing here, we're gonna turn it 90 degrees. Once it's facing this direction, you gently pull on it till it comes out. None of these parts should take excess force unless you've done so many rounds through it that the carbon is binding everything together. Here you have your bolt. This is your extractor. This is where the firing pin comes through and hits the back of the bullet. This thing rotates as you fire. And that's pretty much it. I mean, the bolt assembly on this rifle is like every other AR-15 on the market. So I'm gonna do the same thing to the Alpha Maxx off camera to save a little bit of time. But before I strip this thing down like a single mother trying to pay rent, I'm gonna give you guys an explanation from tip to butt. Here up front, we have a 7.5-inch barrel along with the stock handguard. And as you can see here, the current owner of this dropped this from about standing height and it cracked this M-lock slot. I'm sure that says a lot about the durability of the rest of this. If you can't even drop this thing from a standing height, I question how long this thing will really last you. Up top, we have the stock iron sights, and I have added the hollow sun, so it actually has the same upper and lower as the Omni Hybrid that's sitting right over there. I wonder if the trigger group is gonna be the same as well. And finally, we have this buffer tube brace. Anyway, let's break it down. So on the left here, we have the Omni Hybrid, and on the right, we have the Alpha Maxx. The bolt assemblies are made of the same material as far as I know, and internally are identical to the rest of the other 90% of AR-15s on the market. However, something I do want to point out is the charging handle. This is an aftermarket charging handle that I put on my personal Omni Hybrid. This is a charging handle that comes with every single Omni Hybrid variant. It is dookie. I changed it out for this extended ambidextrous charging handle. I think that is a must upgrade for this rifle because I just cannot stand this charging handle. So the next thing I'd like to mention and talk about is the actual reinforcements on this lower. As you can see, they did add a metal reinforcement around the threading of the buffer tube, as well as on the rear takedown pin, really around this area where you would get that crack on the original Omni Hybrid lower. On the left, you have the Omni Hybrid, and on the right, you have the Alpha Maxx. And even just looking at it from the top down, they are noticeably different. There's different components in there. I am not savvy enough to tell you the exact differences, even if I took them out of the lowers. But to put it in terms that I myself understand, even just the feeling of the trigger is definitely a little different. I prefer the feel of the trigger on the Alpha Maxx more than I do on the Omni Hybrid. And that'll pretty much do it for the maintenance on these rifles. They are very similar with a few minor differences.
So would I buy it again? Honestly, no. And that's not to say that it's a dog shit rifle. It has served me well. This rifle has enabled me to learn the basics of knowing how to shoot a rifle, clearing malfunctions, maintenance, field strip, etc. I learned everything that I know about shooting a rifle on this here. I was on a budget and it did the job. I don't train in rough terrain or shoot for long extended periods of time. So it did everything I needed it to, and if you're on that boat, I would recommend the full 16-inch version. As to whether you should go for the Omni Hybrid or the Alpha Maxx, it really just comes down to whichever one is cheaper, as that is the goal for these rifles, to be cheap and shoot whatever the hell you feed it. As for the ARPs in this family tree, I personally would not recommend this to the demographic that this is appealing to. If you're someone that only has $500 for the rifle, the optic, and the ammo to train with, the full 16-inch version is just going to teach you better habits and be a better all-around pick. The ARP version is likely to give your collarbone a bruise, teach you bad habits, and show you the legal headache that is getting an NFA tax stamp. or it'll turn you into a felon if you just leave your fucks to give at the house. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. If you learned something, make sure to drop a like. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit subscribe, and please share your experiences with this line of rifles down in the comments section down below. Like I said, overall, they're not terrible rifles, they know their place, and they serve it decent. And as for the rest of you that stick all the way through the full video, thank you for watching. I imagine a lot of you came from my Black Ops 2 content. I want to branch off into doing actual arms because I find them fascinating. I love researching them, and I hope you guys enjoy watching them half as much as I enjoy shooting them. Anyway, that's it for me. Y'all can call me Ace. Deuces.